All right, everyone. Welcome to the Paper 2 walkthrough with me, Mr. Qureshi, and yes, I am recording this on my professional podcasting equipment. You're allowed to be oppressed. All right, so the idea is that next week, essentially, I don't see you because of various exams that are going on. And then the following Tuesday is Paper 2 itself. We haven't had much practice on this. So essentially, I'm going to walk you through how to answer these questions. The idea is that I've uploaded this exam paper onto Google Classroom. There's a blank copy and there's a copy that's filled in. All right, just like this. What I would like you to do is bring up the blank copy and the filled in copy in front of you. So as you go through this, as I go through this, what you might want to do is pause the video or even attempt to answer the questions yourself first. Attempt to actually have a go at the practice paper. And then go through the answers with me. See how I've answered them. Listen out for how you need to be structuring each of the different questions. And make sure you're ready for this exam, because the last part of stratification, we haven't had much of a chance to go through, and we really need to. So let's kick off. Component 2, paper 2, 1 hour 45 again. The different topics that are going to come up this time are crime and deviance, social stratification, and research methods again. But this time research methods is going to be applied to a research study, which I'll show you at the end. What you also need in front of you is that revision booklet that I gave you, because everything that I'm asking you to put down onto paper is in that revision booklet, starting with social stratification. If there's anything that's not in there, what I'll do is, this is the point of answering the exam paper, the answers will be noted down in the paper itself. All right? It's 100 marks. To pass this, you need to aim for around 57, depending on if the grade boundaries go up and down. So you're looking for, on average, 57 out of 100 for a grade 4. And that goes on paper 1 and paper 2. So you're looking for an average of, what would that be? 114 out of 200 across the two papers. All right, I hope that makes sense. So remember what I've said to you already. Answer all the questions. If you start leaving things out, your grade plummets. The marks that you get start to crash really, really badly. So for paper 2, the good thing is you can bring in your own general knowledge, your own common sense. So please make sure you do that. All right, if there's anything you don't know, just have a go at answering it. The worst that can happen is you get it wrong. The best that can happen is you get a few marks that stops your grade from plummeting, that stops your grade from basically going all the way, dragging you back down. It might even bump you up a grade. So just like paper 1, let's start off with the first question. You will get given key terms. Use the words in the box below to fill in the spaces in the statements that follow. So let's just go through these one by one. And for those of you who were in class on Friday, the people that weren't in the business intervention, we went through this, but essentially we didn't get time to finish, and I want to make sure you're all capable of doing this. 1A, a term used to describe the idea that men are punished more harshly for crimes than women, is the chivalry thesis. A Marxist writer who studied organized crime. This is someone we haven't done, so it's a bit of a unexpected question, but Chambliss is the answer. A feminist sociologist is Wolby. And a group of people selected for a study by chance meaning random, so it's random sample. Should be a nice, easy 4 marks to start you off. And again, pause the video if you need to. I tend to flick up and down between this quite rapidly, so pause the video if you need it, all right? Let's go down. Second question in this paper, you will be presented with, as I think I've already showed you in the practice that we did in class, you're going to be given a table with data on it. And what you have to talk about is the trends, the patterns that that table is showing you. So this one, gender pay gap in the UK, what it was like in 2017, what it was in 2018. So you can see, you just need to spend some time looking at this table. The UK average has fallen from 14 to 30.7%. In the southeast, the gender pay gap has gone down again. In London, the gender pay gap has gone down. In the north, the gender pay gap has gone down. In the Midlands, so around Birmingham, the gender pay gap has gone down. But in Southwest, it's actually gone up. In Wales, it's gone up. And in Scotland, it's gone down. So what can we say? First question. Identify the area with the highest and lowest gender pay gap in 2018. So looking at the table, the highest in 2018 was London. The lowest in 2018 was Wales. Put that down there. Identify the areas which are below the UK average in 2017. So the UK average in 2017 is 14%. So which areas are lower than 14? Well, the North, Southwest, Wales, and Scotland. When I was writing this in class, I put it shorthand. Please don't, as I've said on here, annotate this, write this out properly. North, Southwest, Wales, Scotland. Next question. 2 patterns or trends shown in the table supporting your answer with reference to the statistics in the table. You have to use the stats, the percentages or the numbers, whatever they are, from the table as examples. So 2 trends, 2 things that we notice as patterns in the data. Well, we can say that generally, across most of the areas, the gender pay gap is decreasing. So you can say the UK average, the gender pay gap has decreased. It falls from 14% to 13.7%. You can also say, however, because this is another pattern, in this data, some areas have increased in the gender pay gap. And as I've mentioned, they are Wales, which went up, the Southwest, which went up, and Scotland, which went up. And you can name them and give their statistics. So you have to be careful about which 2 trends that you talk about, okay? You need to make sure you can look at the trends, look at the patterns, and pick out 2 things that are going on in the data. Right. Next question. What is meant by the underclass? This was not in the revision booklet that I gave you. As I said to the people in the class, it's a group lower than the working class. We tend to say they are people on benefits and not in work. That will get you 1 mark. If you're going to say that on benefits and not in work, your second mark logically has to be, okay, why? Well, they could be on benefits because of disability. That will get you 2 marks. 3B. 2 reasons why some young people experience social exclusion in the UK today. So social exclusion is in the revision booklet. So it's near the back. The heading is who suffers exclusion and how. So 2 reasons why young people experience social exclusion. So if we go to that table, which is about age, the first and pretty much the only thing in that revision booklet about young people is that employers may see young people as inexperienced and older people as outdated. So what I put is, in work, young people may be seen as inexperienced, 1 mark, but you need to develop that point for the second mark, so they may not get hired. Another point which you can put down why young people experience social exclusion in the UK is that they're presented in the media as thugs and gang members and violent. And therefore, people might be afraid of them because of the moral panic that's created around them. So the question is asking 2 reasons why young people get left out. So you need to give 2 reasons why they're left out and 2 places that they're left out of. So the first place I put is work. Second place I put is society. The reasons are work sees them as inexperienced. Society is shaped by how they're presented in the media and they're scared of them. Next question. Now, in paper 2, I mentioned that there will be 3 9 markers in social stratification. One 9 marker tends to be about life chances and inequality. One 9 marker tends to be about poverty, which this one is. This one's about inequality. And one 9 marker tends to be about around social exclusion. This discrimination one is about social exclusion. All right, so just to repeat, you will get 3 9 markers in the social stratification topic. One tends to be about inequality and life chances. One tends to be about social exclusion or exclusion in general. And one tends to be about poverty. This question here, discuss different views of poverty in the UK. In your answer, you are advised to discuss at least 2 views of poverty in the UK. Those 2 views, at least, means you need to try and give 3. But as you'll notice, you only get 1 page to write. So this isn't meant to be a very detailed answer. What it's looking for is 3 points, or in this case, 3 viewpoints. You explain them, and then you try and give an example, or you try to link it back to why that leads people into poverty. So if you turn to the back of your revision booklet, you've got different views on poverty is essentially why do people stay poor? So in the back of the revision booklet, you've got the culture of poverty, you've got the cycle of deprivation, you've got the new right, and you've got the Marxist explanation. I'm going to use the culture of poverty, I'm going to use the new right, and I'm going to use Marxism, and then I'm going to give my own view. Okay? So, different views of poverty in the UK. Why do people stay poor? So people in poverty develop a lifestyle that keeps them poor. And all I'm doing is literally copying out what's in that table in the culture of poverty. So people in poverty develop a way of life that keeps them poor. They may value immediate gratification, so they want everything straight away, have low aspirations, and believe they can't change their situation. How does that keep them poor? These values are passed down through generations. For example, a child in a family where no one has worked may grow up with little motivation to succeed in school or find a job. This is called the culture of poverty. Second view of poverty, the new right. Similarly, the new right says, reading from the table in the booklet, poverty is seen as the result of poor choices and a dependency on benefits. According to new right thinkers, benefits create a culture of laziness and an underclass unwilling to work. For example, some people may choose to stay on benefits rather than take up low-paid work, continuing a lifestyle dependent on benefits, linking back to the question, which keeps them poor. Third viewpoint. However, Marxists will say poverty is caused by the structure of capitalism, again reading from the table, which benefits the ruling class and exploits the working class. The system keeps wages low, so profits stay high, forcing many into poverty. For example, a delivery driver earning minimum wage while the company CEO makes millions shows how wealth is unfairly distributed. So poverty is caused by inequality that's caused by capitalism, which keeps rich people rich, and the workers poor because they are paid low wages. So the Marxist explanation is poverty is caused by workers not being paid enough and rich people being paid too much. It doesn't ask you for your view in this one, or do you agree or disagree? But I would give a short conclusion. My own viewpoint on poverty is that it's caused by, or you can say the viewpoint I agree with is, and say why. So you might want to say, the viewpoint I agree with is the Marxist one because people aren't paid enough and that keeps them poor because they can't afford the basics. Let's go down. So next, it's about power. You got a passage, something you have to read, and there are questions based on that. So let's read this. Power in society. Some groups in society have more power than others. The famous sociologist, Max Weber, tried to explain why people follow the instructions of those in power. One of the reasons he gave was that people followed the orders of those with charismatic authority. Now, we did this, all right? Again, it's in your revision booklet. And it is where it says social stratification revision. It's at the bottom of that table and continued on the next page. So describe what is meant by power. In the booklet, it says power is the ability of a person or group to get what they want despite opposition from other people. You need a second mark. So you can say, as a second point, different groups have different levels of power, or you can say, much more simply, power is unequally distributed. People don't have the same level of power. Part B. Explain what is meant by charismatic authority. So again, definition is in the revision booklet. Charismatic authority is based on the power of personality. You follow someone because they have a particular personality. So you need a second point. For example, authority gained because someone has a lot of followers. You've got two different types of authority left, traditional and rational legal. Please make sure you know what they are. Again, sticking with power, explain two reasons why men are likely to have more power than women. And for this reason, if you turn the revision page over, the revision booklet over, it says gender and inequality exam questions. You've got 7 different questions, all based around gender. Please learn the answers. All right. So this one happens to be question number 4 in the revision booklet. Same question. Explain 2 reasons why men are likely to have more power than women. And all I've done is just copied out the reason and put it into a paragraph or 2 paragraphs. Reason number 1, that men have more power than women. The glass ceiling prevents women from reaching the top jobs, keeping men in higher and powerful positions, for example, CEOs. Reason number 2, why men have more power than women. In families, men still dominate decision-making and control money. Women take care of children at home. This is unpaid, while men work, which gives them power over money and decision-making. So because men go out to work, women don't. They get the money. Women don't. They're financially reliable on their husbands or financially dependent on their husbands. So men have more power over them. In work, the glass ceiling keeps women from the most powerful jobs. Therefore, men retain power there. Let's move down. I'm just going to zoom out on this one so you can see my notes. As you can see, my notes are absolutely horrendous. because I went back and actually added to them because this is where we left off in the lesson. So I'll try and make sense of this for you. Again, it's a 9 marker. You've only got 1 page to write, but I needed more space than that because I, wrote too much. The question is, discuss whether social class is still an important form of inequality. Again, you've got that in the revision booklet where it says, does social class still matter? So when you get a question that asks, is social class an important form of inequality? You are basically being asked, does social class still matter? And where? Where does social class matter? And it's asking you to refer to at least 2 areas of life. So where does social class matter in 2 areas of life? You can use the table in the revision booklet. If you turn over a couple of pages, you've got what affects life chances and how, and you've got social class right at the top. Now here, you also need to give the for and against because it says discuss. You've got to say, is that social class is important, it does matter, and you've got to argue that it doesn't. So, what can we say? So I'm going to try and talk you through my notes, so bear with me, all right? So we can say social class is still an important form of inequality in the UK in education. How? Excuse me. Middle class students have advantages not offered to working class students. Middle class parents can privately educate their children, can provide access to material and cultural factors such as extra tuition, revision guides, and extracurricular trips, while working class students suffer from material deprivation. So the middle class students have an advantage that is directly linked to their social class. So yes, social class still matters because middle class students do better than working class students because their parents can provide them with things like extra tuition, revision guides, and extracurricular trips that working class parents can't. Because it says discuss, you then say, however, the other side. According to functionalists, we live in a meritocracy where the best jobs go to the hardest workers and the most qualified. So the area of life, now please follow what I'm saying. The area of life that I've given is education. I have to say social class matters in education, and then no, it doesn't in education. So when you pick your 2 areas of life, if it says discuss, your for and against paragraphs have to be about that specific area of life. So in education, yes, it matters because of the advantages given to middle class students. However, in education, functionalists also say we live in a meritocracy where the best jobs go to the hardest workers and the most qualified. I hope that makes sense. So you have to stay with the area of life for your for and against paragraphs. Discuss whether social class is still an important form of inequality in the UK. Well, I'm going to say yes. In crime, it is still an important form of inequality because in crime, white-collar crimes, for example, fraud and tax evasion, go undetected, unreported, and unrecorded, and when they are prosecuted, receive lower prison sentences, whereas working-class areas are policed more heavily, and crimes such as theft receive longer prison sentences. So this is where social class affects the criminal justice system. However, my other side, there are other forms of inequality in crime. For example, ethnicity. Black and Asian men are more likely to be stopped and searched and given longer sentences than white Britons or white people. So here I'm saying, yes, social class still matters, but other things matter as well. That's my however. Does social class matter? Is it an important form of inequality in the UK? My 3rd area of life is in work. Where does social class matter there? Because people from higher social classes tend to get into top, higher paid professions like lawyers and doctors. Why? They can afford to go to university. They know people, they have networks, we call that social capital, that helps them get into the top professions for work experience. Working class people may not have access to these networks. They might not be able to afford university. Therefore, they are shut out of the top jobs. However, it can be argued that more people of working class backgrounds can access top jobs today. Okay? By working hard. So you got three areas of life where social class is important, but then you're giving a however. So I've given in education is important, in crime social class is important, in work social class is important. However. 3 paragraphs, short ones. Okay. Now, next one I don't think is in the revision booklet either, but it's quite important. So you might want to write this in your revision booklet for revision. 5A, describe the difference between prejudice and discrimination. Prejudice is having a negative opinion or judgment about people without knowing them. For example, thinking badly of all Muslims because of what you see in the media. So prejudice is having a bad opinion or judging someone, but you don't know them. Discrimination is when you treat someone differently because of your prejudice. So discrimination is when someone acts on that prejudice. So prejudice is in your mind. You're judging. You're thinking. Discrimination is when you do something. It's an act. So when someone acts on that prejudice, treating people unfairly based on a prejudice. For example, you don't like someone, so you exclude them. You don't like someone, or so you don't hire them, maybe because of their race or religion. So 1 mark for the prejudice definition, 2nd mark for the example, 3rd mark for the discrimination definition, 4th mark for an example. All right. Glass ceiling we have done to death. I hope you know it by now. The glass ceiling is a barrier that prevents women from being promoted to the top jobs, for example, management or executive positions. You have to say something extra about it. A second thing, I've said it is a form of gender discrimination, because we're talking about discrimination. It's a form of gender discrimination. So the glass ceiling is a barrier that prevents women from being promoted to the top jobs, for example, management, and is a form of gender discrimination. So how do you get the other 2 marks for the 4 marker? I've put, this might lead to a lack of representation in top jobs, in business, in policing and government, which may affect young girls' aspirations because they might not try to aim for these roles and limit themselves. So I've said what it is. I've given an example. I've given my 2nd point, and I've said what it leads to. So make sure you know your definitions, especially glass ceiling, gender pay gap in this topic. Okay. I think the next one is crime and deviance. Yep. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through the social stratification topic. I'm going to stop the video. And then the second part of this is going to be crime and deviance. Then I'm going to stop the video again. The third part is going to be research methods. But it's the same paper, okay? So make sure you look at parts 1, 2, and 3. So, third 9 marker. Discrimination is no longer a problem in the UK. So what you got to talk about is, where does discrimination exist? But then give the other side. However, what stops discrimination from happening? So discrimination is no longer a problem in the UK. Do you agree with this view? So you have to give a conclusion with your own view. So discrimination, where does it exist? In this case, where does inequality and exclusion exist? Because discrimination is treating someone differently because of who they are. That's inequality and that's exclusion. You need to give 2 areas of life. So in this case, I'm going to give education, I'm going to give employment, and I'm going to give crime. So discrimination exists in education, in employment, and in crime. So let's look at how. In education, discrimination exists because minority students face different teacher expectations than white British students. Who are they? For example, black teenagers' behavior is labeled as trouble. Therefore, they are more likely to get detentions and exclusions. You can also say in education, older people may be excluded from learning opportunities because adult education is less prioritized. It's one of the points in the revision booklet. Then you need to say why discrimination is not a problem in education in this area of life that you've picked. So I've said, however, functionalists might argue that everyone, regardless of ethnicity, receives the same chance at education because we have a national curriculum that everyone goes through, so their achievement depends on their own hard work. Let's move down. Discrimination is no longer a great problem in the UK. I'm saying it is in employment. Discrimination is a problem. Gender discrimination leads to a glass ceiling, which means that women are denied the top jobs. And it leads to a gender pay gap. And I put explain it. So that means that women are paid less than men for the same work that they do. This discrimination affects the aspirations and the life chances of women and girls. However, laws like the Equality Act 2010 have made it illegal to discriminate by gender, and more women are now represented in top jobs like CEOs and as politicians. So I've said discrimination is a problem in employment, and I've given the other side the however. Discrimination is no longer a great problem in the UK. I'm saying it is in crime. And the scan has cut off my answer. In crime, young black and Asian males are more likely to be stopped and searched, so they're being discriminated against. Institutional racism affects how police treat minorities compared to white British people. And what this does is leads to young and black Asian males being overrepresented in the crime statistics. So discrimination is a problem in the criminal system. However, some might argue that they are actually committing those crimes and therefore they're being picked up and being prosecuted fairly. Your however doesn't need to be very long. Okay? So it's asking, do you agree with this view? So you need a conclusion. You will say, I agree or I disagree that discrimination is no longer a great problem in the UK because. So you might say something like, I disagree that discrimination is no longer a problem in the UK because, as you can see, in education, in employment, and in crime, discrimination still exists. Again, your conclusion doesn't have to be very long. All right, I'm going to stop this video there. And what I'll do is I will record part 2, which is about the criminal justice system. So hopefully I know how to stop this. Let's have a look. New